Hi, this is János, it's Real World Audio, and today I am answering Eduard's email. And hi, Eduard. And he wrote about something very interesting, and I thought that I would share this with everyone because it is of something very something of a greater attention that would deserve some attention. Anyway, so Eduard was asking me whether I have considered the transmission line for my Voice of Lancelot speaker. And so this is what he wrote. Hi János, I hope you are well. And I'm doing alright. I wasn't that well, and I shared it with Eduard, but I haven't shared it on the channel. Anyway, I'm still here. I'm all right, but the past couple of weeks I've been just recovering and really haven't done anything audio. Just working on recovery, working on work, and just refocusing to what really matters in life. However, now it's really some time to have some activity with audio other than just listening. So what Eduard said, in a thread online, Lynn Olson mentioned that his Ariel transmission line speaker design had a near flat within 1 dB response between 30 to 100 Hz. He mentioned that this wide response lessens the impact of port placement and room mode agitation, which he says becomes much more critical for bass reflex, which is highly tuned to a specific frequency. So I wonder if you ever considered this, why or why not, when creating your Voice of Lancelot. And Eduard is asking this about the Voice of Lancelot because, for those of you who don't know, Eduard is also a key Voice of Lancelot developer. So some of you know that this Voice of Lancelot loudspeaker thing, the idea, the concept that I thought of, that was my creation. And Eduard was the first one who built Voice of Lancelot for himself. And actually he didn't just build it, but he made a tremendous amount of experimenting, and he made a mono version of it, and he adapted it to corner speaker, So if I go and show you his YouTube channel, this is his YouTube channel homepage, and if you scroll down, you see these are his like different implementations. These are his latest videos of very different kinds of versions and things, and it's absolutely wonderful. I recall that once I received a question about corner speakers, and I myself, I could give some advice about corner speakers to the person who asked, but I myself never specifically built loudspeakers for a corner, because I never had a room where I could place a speaker in the corner. I had that kind of room layout that it would have worked that way. So no free corners in any of the spaces I lived. And however, Eduard would be the perfect person, and his videos are just immensely useful to get some actual experience of what works in the corner and what doesn't, because there's a lot of material on YouTube and on Google Doc, anywhere on the internet, that tells you some theories about it and some textbook material stuff, but I can tell from experience that the textbook material stuff works very different when you try to adapt it in real life. So as with love and relationships, the platonic version and the actual version can, and often they don't even meet even close up. So that's why it is much better to look at someone who really has the real world experience, and Eduard has some amazing experiences to share with us with corner placement. How does that work? So going back to how I designed it and how much did the base linearity play into account when I designed my voice of Lancelot. I was aware that the transmission lines are really have a very strong potential for a very potentially clean bass output, but when you look at the transmission line theory and what people did in the beginning, a lot of that is like partially dampening the transmission line. So now I'm just going to jump to the Wikipedia page, and now it just doesn't fit here, so I might just let me just resize things so we can see things there. Okay, maybe like this. Can I get it bigger? No. Well, kind of. Yeah, anyway, this is not that easy. So let's get there. So this is what Wikipedia says, that this oops, I clicked on it. I didn't want. Okay, so here I just shouldn't click on it. Anyway, this is like a classic transmission line design schematics, as it says here. Stormberg Carlson was the first who created the archetype of this. They didn't invent the transmission line, I think so, but they created what is called here acoustical labyrinth. So that's kind of like getting there. So here, if you see, this is like an acoustical labyrinth because the driver creates sound pressure there, and there are just dividers there, so it's like a labyrinth on the inside, and then whoosh, here's the port, so that's where it can exit. But as you see, this is not like a traditional port, so this is not like a bass reflex speaker. That's why it's a transmission line, because it's not bass reflex. In a bass reflex speaker, the ports have length. They are long ports, and depending on the length and the diameter of the port, you have a tuning frequency for your port. And here there is no port, there's just an opening. And of course we could say that yeah, it still has a diameter and a depth, but the depth is just the faceplate of your speaker. But when you do the calculations, then such a shallow depth would give you a much higher tuning frequency, like something like 300 hertz or 100 hertz, something like that. And what is happening because of the transmission line is that we are getting bass down to, like, depending on the length of the transmission line, you can get bass down to 20 hertz or 17 hertz or even lower. And that totally breaks the theory of the port. So the port calculations do not work for transmission lines. And the same thing for void pipe. Some people said that, oh, the port of the void pipe, how do you calculate the frequency for that? No, you don't calculate the frequency for a void pipe port because it's not a port. I punched it into WinISD to make a calculation what would be the tuning frequency of my void pipe if the mouth of my pipe behaved as a port, and it gave me a tuning frequency for 700 hertz. and everyone who ever built a void pipe can tell you from experience that no, the void pipe's mouth is not tuned to 700 hertz, but it goes as low as the height of the pipe defines, actually 4 times of the height, because it's a quarter wave design. And the same thing for transmission lines. They are also quarter wave designs, which means that they support frequencies 4 times lower than the total length of this acoustical labyrinth. And here what we are seeing is that it is a wider opening here, and then it narrows down, and towards the mouth it becomes the narrowest. So it's like an inverse horn. And And that is what Lynn Olson was doing with his Ariel as well. Let's remove my face to somewhere else, maybe here, so you can see better. So this was the version 6 iteration of his Ariel, and you see here is it's a Dapolito design, so there's one woofer here, another woofer, and a tweeter in the middle. If I, yeah, this is how the faceplate looks like. Oh, you maybe, can you see? No, I just realized that I'm looking at the OBS Studio and I see my mouse cursor there, but maybe I think you might have missed the whole thing. I'm not sure if it will be on the output. So now I just got here and now it shows the magnifier glass, but here you see one woofer, another woofer, and there's the tweeter sandwiched in the middle. And oops, not that one. This is a little bit wacky. Okay, so going back here, so one of the woofers drives this labyrinth here, and we don't see the bottom. We have to scroll down to the bottom. So the labyrinth goes through all of these breakages, and there are these ports in the bottom, so like separate small openings, not just one single one, but smaller ones. So like each transmission line, this is from the upper woofer, feeds these 4 openings on one side and then 4 on the other side, and the second transmission line right here, it drives these 4 vents basically, and they add up, sum up totally, and create the base response. Originally, for his previous versions, these 2 transmission lines merged and they had a single opening to the air, but they noticed that if the transmission lines are kept separate and feed the room separately, then the mid-range is cleaner, because the drivers are not providing acoustic feedback directly to each other. So the feedback comes from the room, which is much more gentle than they coupling within the cabinet. So that gives quite a bit of clarity. So if you are in the business of designing Dapolito transmission lines or Dapolito speakers, even Dapolito bass reflex speakers, this is a nice consideration to have, to keep the 2 internal free air volumes, acoustic spaces for the 2 drivers entirely separate, because your mid-range will be cleaner. So for those of you who don't know about the Ariel and Lynn Olson, the developer of the Ariel speakers, I'm just showing the nutshell hi-fi's front page, and then you see all the links for the Ariel pages. So initially, Lynn Olson is a proper loudspeaker designer. That's I think that's his daytime job, and he is a really famous one at that. And the Ariel has been the, I would say, the holy grail of DIY loudspeaker designs for a very long time. So 20 years ago, this was my dream speaker. I thought that when I grow up as a DIYer, one day I will build the Ariel. And at that time, I did not have the skills to build speakers with this complexity. And he describes that if you don't have a CNC machine, then you will have a really hard time building the Ariel. And there's like many DIYers worldwide who build the Ariel, and yes, it requires like tremendous amount of experience, or maybe access to a CNC machine, and then you are good to go. For me, as a total beginner who wanted to build my first loudspeakers, this was totally out of my range. Plus the drivers that he uses also add up to some significant amount of money, plus the crossover parts are also adding up to a lot of money. And especially if you want to create a quality crossover, because if you don't, I just don't recommend doing it at all. You are just wasting your time and money. So as a beginner audiophile DIYer, that's why I went to void pipe and not the Ariel, because I didn't have neither the skill set to build an Ariel nor the financial funds to finance building one. And however, what I have realized that I have not regretted it. My idea was that I build now the void pipe as a learning experience, and based on that learning experience I can step up to the Ariel one day. And I want to show something. Do I see it? Maybe here. So here it says that it on the front page of the Nutshell Hi-Fi's page for Ariel, there's, you see the name Derek Walton, and he was the one, like you see, he also had built the Ariel, and he had the plans for the void pipes, and I used his void pipes as the basis to create my void pipes. So that was one of my so Derek Walton was throwing out breadcrumbs for me. So like, if he, you know, built the Ariel and he thought that the void pipes were good enough to drive tube amps, then I gave it a try. And as he said, he built them as a joke because he thought that no, that cannot work, and they turned out to be just vastly superior than he expected. And that's what I did, and they just turned out to be way superior than I expected. And what I have realized that whatever I did on the DIY front, it was never the speakers which were the bottleneck. So the my Pine void pipes with their Fostex driver, they just were on top of everything that I throwed on them. And ultimately I went to build the voice of Lancelot because I had the drivers, I had the Altec drivers, and I had them for like almost like a decade sitting on them, and I thought like, let's not sit on them. And I thought like, how can I change the void pipe to suit the Altec drivers? So basically my main consideration, or the idea, how the idea came to my mind to build the voice of Lancelot, like going back to Eduard's question, like, did I take transmission line theory into account when I built it? And my answer is yes and no. I did take it into account, but that having that kind of linearity that Lynn Olson achieved, he also did these like breaking up the transmission lines. So when we go here, you see it is not just a single transmission line, single line, but it is getting broken up. So here when we see, we have the driver, and here we have one breakage. And what I am calling breakages is obstructions into the path of the air motion. And why is that important? It is important because every obstruction you have in the path of the air motion is takes away from the energy contained in the air column. And according to the original transmission line theory, by adding these numbers of breakages, they are actually breaking up the energy of the back wave, plus using the dampening materials, they are taking the energy out even further. So essentially what we have inside the cabinet is sucking out the energy from the back wave. And what I wanted to do, and my design goal, was the exact opposite. I'm using the internals of the speakers to preserve as much of the energy that the driver produces in the back wave as possible. And that's because what I noticed through my adventures with audio is that yes, if we have this kind of approach, which is true for every modern loudspeaker cabinet, even bass reflex cabinet, that everyone wants to dampen the internals, the resonances, and we want to suck out as much of the energy from the inside as possible to make the cabinet resonate less, or I would say excite the least amount of unfavorable resonances from the cabinet. And I think that works exceptionally well for commercial loudspeakers, and is a very foolproof way of how to build a loudspeaker that integrates well with commercially designed products, with products that are voiced to run these, I would say neutral, but not neutral, or neutered or neutral loudspeaker designs. And I call them neutered because they are neutered, so a lot of the energy they produce is taken out. And there it has a positive side, that there's an increase in clarity. But there's not an increase in clarity because it is mandatorily an increase in clarity, but the clarity is increased because the cabinet in its first place was designed in a way that these reflections, the internal resonances, must be taken away because they behave very poorly when untreated. So really the designers have no choice but to dampen the heck out of the interiors and break up the transmission line with these curves. So and these are not just placed there here randomly, these are not randomly placed there. Where they are actually is specifically calculated what are those frequencies where we want to, where Lynn also wanted to break up the resonances and how to dampen the transmission line. So for me, what I did is to just have a single big internal column that can resonate freely. It has only one breakage point where the air turns around, and here we have how many breakage points? So we have here 1 breakage point, 2 breakage point, 3 breakage point, 4 breakage point, 5, 6, 7 breakage points plus dampening. And with my design, with the voice of Lancelot, I have, instead of 7, I have only 1 and 0 dampening. So and actually, so that was one consideration, like how my voice of Lancelot design is different from these traditional transmission line speakers. That I would say that's the major difference. And where are we now? I don't want 24 minutes. Oh geez. So I don't want to just make this video an endless video that everyone gets lost. So I think maybe I will just stop here. Yeah, so thank you, Eduard, for asking this this question that I think a lot of us DIYers are really want to know about the transmission lines. And there's one more thing I want to add about it, is that When you look at transmission line speakers, the audiophile community is broken into two parts. There's some who say that they have the best bass and they're the best speakers you can go, and the others say that transmission lines are broken and they are useless speakers. Who is right? Both of them are right. For some people, a traditional transmission line will sound broken, and for others, anything that is not a traditional transmission line, that will sound broken. And it's kind of like caviar. Is there anything wrong with caviar? No, there's nothing wrong with caviar, unless it's spoiled, then yeah, it's wrong. But if it's unspoiled caviar, there's some who absolutely love caviar and others who can't take it, can't even handle the smell of it. So the same thing with that. So this is not for Eduard, but everyone else who is interested in and wondering about transmission lines. And my take on it, that those people who cannot stand transmission lines, they have a problem with that aspect of that dampening does to the sound of the transmission lines. Because in my iteration, where I don't have these breakages built into the sound and I don't have the dampening there, and I let that whole column of air resonate, and actually I have that column long enough so that it reaches down to the 30 hertz region, and here this is not possible because this speaker is smaller than that. How tall it is? I'm not sure. Can I see it? 47 inches tall. What is that? Yeah, so this is about half the length, probably what I have for the internal length of my pipe. So maybe like 70 hertz or something like that is the internal quarter wave resonance of this transmission line, and there you do need the dampening, and the higher the frequency of the transmission line is, the more dampening you need, because you will have, the more this frequency is higher than the lowest frequency you need for your music material, the more dampening you need, because the more off it will sound, because it is just getting overloaded by the really deep frequencies. And in my case, that I'm reaching down to the 30s, there is very little overload to the internals of the cabinet itself. And actually, even though these are called like quarter wave designs, they like an eighth of the wave, they are still not showing massive signs of overloading. So in the case of the Arias, we are probably overloading them around like 70, half of the 70s, so like 35 hertz and below. So the lowest octave is really what is messing around with the internals. And in the case of my voice of Lancelot, 35 divided by 2, so like 17 hertz. So like down to 20 hertz, the cabinet is really happy. And that's why I designed my port to be tuned to 18 hertz, so that whatever energy is there that the internals of the cabinet cannot handle, the port takes over that lowest octave. And because there are no dampenings on the inside, all of that energy can just go and shunt it out to those lowest frequencies, and the energy is not getting stuck inside the cabinet. Because when we put dampening, it doesn't mean that the energy is sucked out. It doesn't just disappear like that. When we have dampening there, it absorbs the energy, it contains it, and it breaks it apart into random Brownian motion, basically. So and that slowing, that dampening effect that creates a muddiness, a slowing into the speed of the bass, and that's what the transmission line haters are allergic to. So when you don't like that kind of sound, those are the things. No, transmission lines are broken, and they're right. There's something funny going down in the bottom region. But there's also like tons of things that transmission lines do great, and which those people who like other speakers, those speakers don't do it right. So it's like pick what you want. So what I have picked with my voice of Lancelot is the best of both worlds. So to have the bass extension of the transmission lines, but coupled with the speed and instant delivery that transmission lines normally do not have. And so now I'm hitting half an hour. Thank you for listening for so long, and bye, Eduard. Say hello to the cats. Say hello to Max. Bye bye.